Okay, cool. Hi guys, I see there's three people here. If you have any questions during out the whole process of this whole thing, you can just go into the live chat. I do have my laptop on the side so that I'll be able to see all the questions that people have or any discussions that we're gonna be having during this live. So if you have seen, there's a video that I did last week about university applications, and the video pretty much just explained pretty much the basic steps that you need to do university applications in South Africa, from you discovering what you want to actually study and doing research about the entry requirements that is required of you, where to do these applications, and also what entry requirements are going to be required of you, the documentation, etc. So moving on from the conversation that I had in that video, there was a few things that I thought were very important for me to discuss in addition to the university applications that you're going to be doing. Because once you are in the university, you need to have a place to stay and you need to have funding. So today I'm going to be discussing more on that, but if you guys do have any other questions regarding the application and stuff, you can just put it down in the live chat. I do see someone asked where I'm from. So originally I'm from Zimbabwe, but I've been in South Africa for the longest time. So everything that I'm going to be discussing about is going to be from a South African context. And to Gugu Ntanti song, hey girl and welcome. Okay, so first off, when you're doing your application process, it's very important that you guys document everything, because with university applications a lot of things do go wrong. Like for me, from experience, I did not get accepted to the university that I wanted, which was UWC, because of a lot of communication breakdown that went down, because they kept on insisting that I need to have a USAF application form or the receipt from USAF to say that because I'm a foreign student I'm supposed to have it. But I kept on telling them, hey, I did my matric in South Africa. I'm a current matric student. But because I had no record of all these people that I was telling and everything was happening telephonically, I didn't have any names of the people that I was speaking about. And when I went to plead my case, people were like, well, we don't know who you spoke to, so we can't really help you. So that kind of became a big problem. So that's the first thing, is you need to document everything regarding your university applications. So moving on, I'm going to be speaking about residence. Like I said, you've applied, you know what university you want to get to and things like that. And you need to have a place where you're going to be staying. And university residence or university accommodation is constantly a big problem, especially in a South African context, especially in the Western Cape. I mean, I've been in the Western Cape for the longest time, and these are conversations, these are fights that we're having constantly every year, where there's an influx of students coming to the Western Cape. And unfortunately, universities cannot fully accommodate for all the university students that are coming in, because the university has over 10,000 students on a yearly basis, new applicants, and now imagine all the students that are still current university students. So everyone wants a place to stay. And unfortunately, the universities cannot always accommodate that. So there's different types of accommodation options that you can look at depending on your finances, your resources, and depending on your family structure and whether you're based in the Western Cape or outside. But this can work anywhere where you are based. So first off, there's a university application and the university residence. Usually those two come together. You will see that at the end of your university application, they'll ask you to opt in if you want to apply for university residence. It's very important that you're opting in on that, so that your application goes at the same time instead of you trying to do a separate application. Some universities will expect you to do a separate application for university residence. So even if you are still considering your options, I would still highly suggest that you do the accommodation application also as soon as possible, so that you at least put your foot in the door. So that's a university residence. That one is obviously ideal because it's within the university campus. You would have to put in cost of transport, and there won't be a lot of traveling expensive for you because you are within the university setup. So that's the first one. Then you will have your private accommodation, and that private accommodation can either be on the university premises or just close by. And usually the university and that private accommodation will have a relationship, and they'll either provide transport for you guys between campus and the private accommodation, or the private accommodation itself will have buses or transport services that will move you back and forth between the different campuses. So having private accommodations that have that good relationship with the university, one, it works in your favor because you can still access the university resources like the library if you want to use the gym, and everything is within close proximity with each other. And also with the transport, that transport cost becomes part of your accommodation fee that you're paying, because that private accommodation has that relationship with the university. But obviously, because now you're using private accommodation, it is going to be more expensive than if you were staying on campus. But because of the good relationship that they have, you can get discounts on certain things, and also because you're having, you know, that the university trusts this accommodation that you're going to be involved in. So those are the two main safest options for you when it comes to university accommodation. Then the third option is for you to do student housing. So student housing is usually people that stay around a university will take an opportunity to say, hey, there's students that are going to these universities and they're going to need accommodation. So most people turn their houses into university accommodation, whether they had a big house that they now want to rent out, and because they can rent it out, they get money. However, these accommodation people can turn out to be scams, or they might not keep the student housing at the greatest quality. But if you do your research, you'll find some really good student housing accommodations. So with these student housing accommodations that are nearby the university, you need to find out whether it's a mixed housing, or if it's just for females, or if it's just for males. Some student housing will mix and say, you guys are adults, you will figure out the logistics of that. Others will specify that it's strictly just for females, others will say strictly just for males. And you can choose the type of setup that you want. So you can either share with someone in one room, where it's a bunk bed here or a single bed here, and it's two people in one room. I've seen some rooms that even have up to 3 people staying in one room. Other option, you can say, I want the full room to myself, and then obviously you'll be paying a little bit more to have that flexibility and that privacy. Then obviously the communal areas will be shared, which is your bathroom, your kitchen, etc., and other amenities that the housing might have. So when you're looking for these student housing, usually you can find it on, I think there's a platform called sharing.com. There's one that's called Find My Roommate. There's another one called Roomies. And there's also on Gumtree. You can also go and check there for student housing, and then you just specify in which location you're looking for student housing. The best thing that I can tell you about this student housing, guys, it's very important that you view the place before you pay the deposit that is required, because I've heard of so many scams of people stealing people's money because you've paid the accommodation or you've paid the deposit and you haven't seen the place. Then you end up seeing the place and you're not happy with what you have seen. That's the first thing. So if you have someone that stays in the area where you're wanting to move to, whether you're moving to Johannesburg, whether you're moving to Cape Town, if you have someone that can go check out the place for you, that would be ideal. Yes, I know sometimes it's a bit tricky, but I've seen also some students that come to the Western Cape at least like a week before they start university, for them to be able to look for this accommodation themselves, for them to be able to see it physically. And I understand it's not something that everyone is able to do, because obviously that's money for you to travel here and so forth, but it's very important that you find an accommodation, or you find someone who can look for these accommodations for you, just for that safety aspect. And also you need to make sure that where the student housing is located, it's in close proximity to the university, and also there's going to be easy transportation between going to the university and back, because you don't want to find a place that's very far away from where you need to be. That's just going to create another extra headache for you. But obviously there's always the option of finding what you can at that moment in time, and usually after time people will start speaking with each other in class and say, hey, this is a student accommodation that's a bit closer, and you can always move later on, but please just be careful when you're doing that. The other option is you can find students that have studied at your university. Guys, that's a great thing about Facebook groups. That's a great thing about Instagram. A lot of people nowadays putting their university where they went in their bio. Just DM people and say, hey, I'm just looking for accommodation. Can you just give me ideas of where to look at, so that you have some sort of trusted person that you can go to and say, hey, I'm looking for accommodation, can you assist me? You can also go on my YouTube channel. There's a video that I did about university accommodation, and in the link in that description there is a list of student accommodations within the Western Cape areas. You can check that out. Obviously that list is from like 2022, so it might not be the most accurate, but it will give you a starting point of where to be if you're looking for accommodation. Then obviously the last option is for you to stay at home. I stayed at home, I survived, so you kind of get used to it. Yes, staying at home, it's got its own pros and cons, but with like every university accommodation set up, it's got its own pros and cons. Obviously the cons, or the pros, let me start with the pros. The pros of staying at home is you don't have to worry about the stress of moving your stuff. You don't have to worry about the stress of sharing with other people. Yes, you might have siblings and your home setup might not be ideal, but you still have that peace of mind of knowing that you're at home with people that you know, people that you trust, and you just have the care and love and support from your family members. That's the ideal thing. And also, if you're staying at home, you can structure your house based on what your needs are, based on what university expects of you. And obviously the closer you stay to the university, the better for you. But I just feel like having that comfort, or being in a place that you're comfortable with, that you know, that's the best security that you can get. However, the cons that come with that is if your house or your family structure does not allow you to have your own space, it might hinder your university structure, or you might need to be out late and your parents have a lot to say about you being out late. It just comes with that, having that parental conflict. It definitely does come up. I definitely had that with my parents, where I've got deadlines that I'm worried about. There's things that I need to be doing right now, and your mom wants you to be washing dishes, they want you to be cooking. So there is that conflict that comes. I'm not denying that, but it's just for you to now have that conversation and say, hey, this is the deadlines that I have, and we need to make a plan for us. And I also do understand that your house might be crowded and things like that, so that's why you have to weigh your options. And I do understand that people choose rather to do university accommodation just to get away from that. I understand, but I also want you to have all the options open to you, whether you're choosing university accommodation, whether you use choosing private accommodation, whether you're choosing to go with student housing, and whether you're choosing to stay at home. A lot of us, we've stayed at home and we have survived. Other people have been on student accommodation, they have thrived or they have suffered. It all has its pros and cons, but it's just important for you to know what your options are. So that's the first thing that I wanted to cover. Then the second thing is you need to be aware of the university costs that are going to come up when you get to university. The first and the most obvious one is obviously tuition fees. And tuition fees comes with you with the application fees that you're going to be paying to do these university applications. And I've noticed that a few universities have taken away that university application because everything is happening online. So that's a pro for everyone doing university applications now. Then the second thing that comes up is obviously the registration fee. So if you're a South African citizen, that's all you literally have to pay in the beginning, that registration fee. And then you create sort of a debit order situation with the student credit management to say, hey, I'm going to be paying this amount at this rate, etc. However, if you are now a South African citizen, they're going to require you to pay your fees upfront, and you can negotiate with them to say, hey, in first semester, these are the modules that I need. Can I just pay for the modules that I'm going to be doing this semester? They can allow you to do that on top of the registration fee that you have to pay. So that is something for you to be aware of. Then comes obviously your accommodation fees. If you're going to be at university accommodation, the prices range between 30 to 40,000 rand a year. If you're gonna go for private accommodation, when I did it in 2019, the private accommodation that I applied for, they charged me about 60K, and that was for a sharing room. So the prices might be a bit up now. And then if you're gonna go via student housing, the prices start from about 4,000 up to like 8,000, depending on whether you're sharing, the location that you're in, and obviously how nice or the amenities that the place will provide for you. So those are the kind of price ranges that you need to be aware of. Then other things that you're also going to need to cover is obviously you're going to need a device. Whether you're going to be using an iPad, a tablet, a laptop, you need a device that's going to allow you to do your schoolwork. Some people have survived not having a device and using university devices, but it's just ideal having something that you can take home with yourself so that you have easy access to things. You're going to need internet connection, whether that's going to be you keeping your own internet connection or using the accommodation and the university internet connection. Then other things is transport. Obviously, the further away that you are staying from the university, the more transport costs that you're going to be paying for you to go from your house to the university. And also, if you're going to be anyone within the health sector, you're going to be going to placements, you're going to be going to different hospitals, different clinics, etc. And you can either use the transport that is going to be provided by the university, but obviously if you stay on the outskirts, the university transport that is provided might not be accessible to you, and that will mean that you're going to be using your own money to go to these different facilities. So that is something to be aware of. And then obviously it's your textbooks and stationery. The best advice that I can give you regarding textbooks is you don't necessarily need to buy textbooks. I survived 4 years without buying textbooks. I think I bought one. I used it like 2-3 times maximum, and I ended up selling it because it no longer have served a purpose for me. And the reason for that is the slideshows that you're going to be getting from your lecturers, they are based off the textbook. So they've already given you the information out of the textbooks. And if you need a little bit more understanding of what the slideshows say, then go to your university library, go through the chapter that you want to get more understanding on, and then you just add your notes and you put the textbook back. The other third thing is most of the textbooks that we're using nowadays, they are available in PDF forms. So you can get that access to those PDF forms without having to pay money. And also some universities will give you a platform where all these textbooks are uploaded, and as long as you're using your university email and you're on the university premises, it will allow you access to these textbooks. So you don't really have to spend money on textbooks, but obviously you're going to need stationery, pens, files, etc., depending on how you like to structure your system. So that's other thing that you need to be aware of. And then obviously there's the extras. You need a good backpack to keep your stuff. If you're going to be in the health sector of things, you're going to need uniform, you're going to need good comfortable shoes, you're going to need to buy food, etc. So those are the different costs that you need to be aware of. I'll put it also a link down in the description box when the live is ended, of a compact list that I've created for students to be aware of. And these are conversations that you guys need to be having with your parents or whoever is going to be sponsoring your education, of saying, hey, these are the costs that are going to be involved in me going to university, and we need to prepare for this. There's a lot of students, myself included, where we get to university and our sponsors or our parents are not prepared for what is coming ahead of them. And as a result, it creates a bit of friction between us and our parents, and also creates a friction between us and enjoying the university process or enjoying the university experience, because most of us will now end up having to get extra jobs, be able to pay for the different things that is required of us. That will also mean that we might miss out on some opportunities because you can't pay for it. And I understand we're not going to university to party, to have a time of our life. We're definitely going to university to get an education so that we can better our lives. However, not being financially savvy and not being financially ready for the journey of getting into university absolutely gets into the way of you having a more comfortable university experience. There's nothing more stressful than you being in a university exam and worrying, am I going to have enough money to register for the next semester? Am I going to have enough money to go for this excursion that is required of me? Am I going to have enough money to have food for the rest of the week? That is just an unnecessary burden that most of us end up having to take. And yes, it makes us strong and things like that. But if you can have this conversation now with your parents, your guardians, and your sponsors and say, this is a list of what I need sponsored for. Can we have a conversation about how we're going to get this funds? And also, if you have a list of the funds that you need covered, this is the best way for you to approach your different funders. So now I'm moving into the funding aspect of things. If you have been accepted from a university already, or as time moves on during the year, you get accepted from a university, take that university acceptance and go and pitch yourself to different companies. It's more ideal asking companies for sponsorships if you're already in, because they know you've already had good marks to allow you to get into the program. Then you take your application or you take your acceptance form and you take the cost breakdown of what is going to be required for your course. That's the tuition fees, the textbooks, etc. Then you can say, hey, I've been accepted to University A. If you've been accepted to multiple universities, that's even great. It works better for you. And these are the costs that I need covered. Where can you meet me? What can you cover for the 4 years or for the first years I get into university? And if you can approach companies that are based within the sector that you're going to get into, you will have a highest chance of success. So for example, those of you that are in the finance sector, you can approach banks. Actually, a few banks have bursaries and scholarships that they offer for anyone going into the commerce industry. So if you're doing accounting, economics, any business related course, any financial, actuarial science, all those courses that are needed within the banking sector, you can use that as a way to pitch yourself and as a way for you to apply to those private companies. If you're someone that is going into the health sector, you've got your health bursaries that are provided by your private institutions like your Netcare, your Mediclinics. You also have got your government health bursaries that are also accommodate for those in the health sector. Then you can also approach other private companies such as your Netcare, such as your Clicks, you can go to Discam, you can go to Old Mutual. All those different sectors, they are more willing to accept you, or they're more willing to have a discussion with you about having private sponsorships if you have those two things of the course that are required of you and also having the acceptance form. And also, if you know any rich person within your family or a friend of a friend or a family friend that you know that is really doing well, you can approach them and say, hey, I've been accepted to University A, B, and C, and this is the course that is required. Where can you meet me? What can you assist me with? And then you can have an agreement that after you've graduated, you will pay back off a little bit. And some private institutions, especially those that also provide internships, they can say while you're doing your internship, they'll take a little bit from your pay or from the years and months and weeks of experience that you're giving them as a way to pay back that loan. But it's very important that you have the course breakdown and you also get accepted. So that is why it's important for you to apply as early as possible to the universities and to the colleges and apply early so that you can get your acceptance as early as possible. Universities such as Stellenbosch and UCT, because they close earlier, they are the ones that are usually more likely to give you an acceptance earlier. I know when I applied to WITS, I think I applied in April, early May. By the time it got to October, I had an acceptance already for university. So if you can apply to as many universities, that's why I said in that video that I mentioned at the beginning, that if you spread your net wide, you're able to get that acceptance that you require as early as possible, so that you can use it to cover your expenses. So that is very important. If you guys have any questions, you're more than welcome to drop it down in the chat. Then the other conversation that we need to have is, I always get asked questions about NSFAS. And as far as I know, NSFAS is not taking any new undergraduate applications at the moment. They are just assisting current university students or students that are already on NSFAS to allow them to finish their degree. So that is usually a conversation that I get asked of, what about NSFAS and things like that. People need to be aware that NSFAS is like a loan system where you apply to them and say, hey, can you sponsor for me while I'm studying, and after I finish studying, can I pay you back after that? So if NSFAS can do that, then you can also consider other platforms that allow you to do that. There is Fundi that also allows you to take student loans. And you need to be aware of, or you need to be sure that you get a job after you finish studying so that you can pay off these loans. But obviously people prefer NSFAS because it's reputable, or it's one that people know the most. However, in the past couple of months, or rather the past couple of years, there's been a lot of issues with NSFAS, of funds not being paid out on time, people being stuck regarding accommodation processes because NSFAS is not paying on time, and a lot of private accommodation or student housing do not like to take students that are on NSFAS because of that. So that is just something that you need to be aware of, that hey, if I'm going to try to apply for these loan systems, you need to be aware of the pros and cons that come with that. So if anyone has any questions, you're more than to drop it down. Tembelihle, hi dear, how are you? Okay, so I've covered that, and I've covered that, and I've covered that. Okay. Then the other thing that I want to discuss, obviously something that I get asked a lot, and that is, my dear international students, I know we have it hard. It's not an easy journey that we go through with university applications and things like that. Please be aware of the upfront fees that is required of you. I've already mentioned that. The second thing is, if you have done your matric in South Africa, please make sure that you are following up with the application body or the university that you've applied to make sure that they don't remove your application based on you not having a USEF form or a SACA form. Because these platforms, as soon as you put in your passport number on their system, the system automatically pings you as an international student, as if you are someone outside of South Africa. And as a result, even if you're doing your matric in South Africa, because you put in your passport number, the system cannot tell the difference. So it's very important that you're following up on that, and you're making sure that your application is not disregarded as a result of you having a passport number. Can you please recommend companies that fund international students, especially Zimbabweans? Look, trying to find funding for private companies for international students, it's tricky, because obviously most of these companies are based in South Africa. As a result, they're more likely to fund South African citizens. That's just the reality of it. So there is one company that I applied to. It was called the Islamic Relief Fund. You can check it out. I didn't have the best of experience with them because, one, I was told that I was accepted for this scholarship, and then they just ghosted me. I asked, when is it gonna be paid out, what's happening, and things like that, and I just got ghosted. But I see that they're still functioning as of right now, so that could be something that you can look into. Maybe you have better luck with them. And the other thing is, when you do your university application, the university, if you have really good marks, usually the university will ping your application to say this person has good marks, we can provide them a scholarship. So I think usually at the end of your application, there's an option for you to opt in for the university to consider you for bursaries and scholarships. Opt in, even if you have funding elsewhere, you can also opt in for that. They're called the Islamic something fund. Let me find it for you quickly. Islamic Relief Fund. I'm pretty sure that's what they're called. Islamic Relief Fund. Yes, they're called Islamic Relief South Africa, and there's a fund that they use for international students. Then the third option is there's a platform called Fundi that can be something that you can look into. It's obviously a loan basis, so you would have to pay back at some point, but that can be something that you can look into. There's not many scholarships and bursaries, especially for international students. However, if you do have permanent residence in South Africa, then all or most scholarships that are for South African students, you can qualify for that. So if you've got permanent residence, usually you can apply for Alan Gray. It accepts students that have got permanent residence. But if you don't have permanent residence and you're on the study visa, then you literally have to go door to door to different private companies to say, hey, this is what I'm studying, this is the goal that I have, I've been accepted here, this is the funding that I require, and you pitch yourself to the different companies. So that's why it's important that you've got good references that are going to back you up on what you want to do, and also on your character profile, so that they know what type of person that you are, so that they can better understand who you are and they can fund you for that. But unfortunately, yeah, in the years that I did my studies, I did not find any scholarships or bursaries that covered international students. But the funny thing is, now that I'm looking into like postgraduate applications and processes, there's a lot of them now. So I don't know what the issue is with undergraduate students, but if you're doing postgraduate, there is plenty scholarships and bursaries. But unfortunately for undergraduate, you have to find private sponsors, and you have to pitch yourself to these different private companies for them to consider you, because for them it's just business. It's more risk averse if they sponsor South African citizens instead of non-South African citizens. So that's why you would have to pitch yourself. Okay, then the other thing that I wanted to cover was students that want to get into nursing, but they don't have the requirements to get into nursing. Okay, so this one is tricky because obviously it makes me question whether you really wanted to get into nursing right from the get-go, or whether you're now getting into nursing based on there's job security, there's money, and so forth. But anyway, with those stuff out of the way, if you genuinely you have a conviction now that you want to get into nursing, but you don't have the required marks, or you don't have life sciences because that's the one that blocks everything, you can apply to get into your education or any course that's going to have life sciences as one of their modules, but does not require you to have life sciences when you apply for it, which is usually why I suggest going into the education sector. Because if you get into education, usually you would do a module on life sciences or biology or human anatomy or something along those lines, and then you can eventually transfer out of education into nursing. However, if you're going to be doing an internal transfer, the competition is going to be much higher than it was when you were applying in the beginning. And also, they're going to be can you please save the live? I'm preparing for exam and tomorrow. Check when I have time. No problem, I will save the live. And also because you are now an internal transfer, you are more marked more harshly because they're now wondering why are you doing an internal transfer when you could have done it in the beginning. And also because the modules might not necessarily link together, but because you now have the life sciences that you need, they will still have to consider you. So that is one option that you can do. The other option is, let's say you do have life sciences, however, because nursing has such a high demand and the life science mark that you had allows you to get into courses like physiotherapy, occupational therapy, to be a dietitian, you can still go into those courses and then eventually transfer, because the first year for your occupational therapist and your physiotherapist students, we're all covering human anatomy, biology. Our first year modules are very similar, so it would be easier for you to transfer in to nursing, and also vice versa. If you got into nursing but you're like, nah, this is not my thing anymore, you can do the same thing to transfer out. So that's why it's important that when you're doing your applications, you spread your net a little bit wide, so that if you don't get into the one that you want, the other university, the other courses that you apply and get into will still give you a way to get back into the course that you really want. And I know a lot of students that go to UCT, they also do this thing of your finance courses or your human life sciences courses. Usually your first year you're all doing pretty much similar modules, because the first year is when you guys are experimenting, you're trying to figure out where you want to be, and after first year most people will decide whether this course is for them. And as a result of you guys having similar modules in first year, it allows you to be able to branch out or to transfer to the other courses should you wish. But I would not suggest you go that route, because it's much harder for you to get into the other courses if you're doing an internal transfer. But that is an option that you have. DCR33, you're doing good, I see. Thank you so much, I guess. I'm assuming it's someone who really knows me, but I don't know who DC7R3 is. But thank you so much, I guess. So yeah, that is something that you need to be aware of when you're doing applications, of spreading your net a little bit and giving yourself a bit of flexibility, so that should you wish to do an internal transfer, you can do that. So pretty much that is all that I had for you guys, for you to be aware that you need to document everything when you're doing your university applications. Be aware of the costs that are required of you when you're doing your university applications, so that you can budget your things properly, and also being aware of the different university accommodation options that are available for you, so that you can choose the one that best works for you and your situation. And also being flexible to move around between the different ones, whether you get into university accommodation and you're like, nah, this is not for me, I want to stay in a student housing accommodation, or I'm staying at home, it's not working for me, I need to find accommodation to be closer to university. And that is something to be aware of. And also what to do if you don't have the marks, or if you don't have the subjects to get into nursing, and how internal transfers works. So that is all from me today. So thank you guys for joining me for this live, for us to just have this back and forth conversation of what you can and can't do when it comes to university applications. I'll definitely save the live so that you guys can look at it at a later time. So until next week, Friday, 12 p.m. South African time, have an awesome one. Bye guys. Okay.